So I got this is a Chinese scanner. Can't afford the American or Canadian ones. And it goes through the different types of system, or different models, I think is what it's doing there. Finds one and it gives a check mark. One check mark. Processing. There we go. Okay, it says spark type ignition. Well, that's not correct. Okay, read codes. Exhaust gas recirculation flow insufficient detected. Yeah, so that's the EGR valve is plugged up. So that's what that engine light is. So there's the EGR valve. And there's the intake into the engine. So I'm gonna start it up like this, and I'll see if I got exhaust coming out of the EGR valve, and I'll see if I got blow-by coming out of the intake. Just as just for giggles, just see if I see anything out of the ordinary. Yeah, there's a little bit of exhaust coming out of there. No, it's not closing fully. Nothing but a straight draw out of the intake. We'll see how it idles without that exhaust gas going in there. No missing whatsoever. No misfires, no rough running, nothing with the EGR disconnected. So the reason this thing is running poorly is it's sucking exhaust in all the time. So yeah, I'm gonna block off the EGR and we'll see if I get an engine light from low flow again. I just gotta figure out how to take that thing off. So intake pipe is off. Intake pipe is off, and that's where the where does the exhaust go into this thing? Don't know. I guess it comes in through that pipe there, and then that pipe also has coolant running through it. Is that how that works? The exhaust going into the EGR also has coolant running through it to cool it off before it goes into the EGR valve. That makes sense. I mean, it's such a small motor and such a small amount of exhaust gas going in. I guess you know, that could be the EGR cooler there. Just the pipe running into the EGR itself runs coolant through it, and then that's the EGR cooler. Makes sense. Yeah, it's definitely easier to block that off on the EGR side. So I'll pull that off on the EGR valve itself. So these two on the side here, the pipe coming into the EGR valve, that's the EGR cooler, and it's also it's the exhaust into the EGR and the EGR cooler all in one. You just call it a cooled pipe. It's got the coolant running through it. It just looks like a pipe. The other end has a barb on it too for the coolant. So that's a coolant line. And then the exhaust gas goes through the center of that thing. Why this thing is so oily? I guess that's from not changing the oil as often as it should. Okay, so I'll pull that off of there and then we'll make a little plate. I'll make 2 of them because I'm going to do the same thing with the other car. And then we'll block it off at the EGR valve. And then no more rough running. Well, there's a lot of oil in there. A lot of oil in there. Okay, so the intake pipe is disconnected there. Okay, so there's 3 bolts that hold the EGR in. I pulled the actuator off the top there. There's 3 bolts for the actuator. And it just pushes on that plunger there. Well, it's not seized, but it's probably not closing all the way. And then to get the EGR out, there's 3 bolts. There's one right here. There's one I pulled out already. It's on the bottom here. Wait, where is it? It's right there underneath the connection for the exhaust gas to go in under the EGR tube, exhaust gas cooling tube. So there's 1 bolt that holds the EGR on there on the bottom, and then there's one right here that's below the motor on the intercooler there. So to get that one out, I gotta pull the fan off the intercooler. So this fan has to come off, and it just gotta cut these zip ties and then move the wires out of the way, move the bundle of wires out of the way. Okay, so you don't have to pull the fan off the intercooler to get that last bolt on the EGR off. You just have to get it loose. You just have to get it loose enough you can wiggle it around so you can get your socket and your extension in there to loosen the bolt off. So that's what I'm gonna do. Now you can see there I got my socket on the head of the bolt, and I got my extension on there. To get that in there, I just lift it up on the fan shroud that's popped out on the bottom, and got my socket on there. So once you crack those bolts loose, you can loose them off by hand. So I'll get it loose, and then I'll take it out the rest of the way by hand. Almost done. There's my socket. It's a really good spot for stuff to go missing. There's one greasy EGR. Such a tiny little valve on there. I could just plug that hole with JB Weld too. And screw trying to weld in there. Just plug it up with, fill it up with 8 JB Weld and then put it back on. I can't put too much in there because there's the actuating valve there. Holy smokes, that's just a... Does that thing even make a difference? Like, holy smokes, this thing is so tiny. Well, I guess that can let a lot of exhaust gas in there. Like, holy shit, that's just a tiny little opening. Tiny little opening. Compared to a truck or something. It's a pretty tiny EGR. Okay. So how does it seal on there? Is there a gasket? Doesn't appear to be a gasket on that thing. Did the gasket fall down in there? Use the gasket. Oh, there it is. Okay. So there's the gasket. Just a little pressure sensitive metal gasket. So just like that. Sure, I can make one of those. So there really isn't like, there really isn't that much like pressure on one of these things. Like I have a, so if you are going to make a blockout plate, it doesn't have to be some kind of big thick plate. Like you can cut it with a pair of tin snips. Like here I got 1/8 inch steel, a little bit less than 1/8 inch steel with a 3/16. So I just got it soaking in a pail of gas. Just make sure that plunger goes in far enough. It really wasn't that dirty. It's pretty clean. Just if I cleared the code a couple times and ran it a bit more, it probably wouldn't even been plugging up. Yeah, it's not even really carboned up that much. It's it's been sitting and driving in the city lots. So this plunger wouldn't go down all the way is what was going on. And then it was stuck open a little bit. It wasn't completely sealed. So I'll put the metal gasket on the exhaust side with the blockout plate, and on this side, I don't know, maybe I'll go find some gasket material from an exhaust manifold or something, or just use some high temp silicone on there. We'll see what I have here. This side, it doesn't matter if it's leaking a little bit. The only time it's gonna leak is when, like I said, when it's under boost pressure. And the only time the boost pressure is ever gonna reach it is if the EGR valve is open. It's never going to suck in anything through there unless you got a really big gap and the EGR is open at idle or something. But so yeah, seal it moderately. It doesn't have to be an incredible seal on there, and regular silicone will probably fail after a certain amount of time because it might get, actually no, this will, seeing as how I'll have it, it might get hot because it's connected to the exhaust. may get a little bit hot, but once it travels up that EGR pipe, and by the time it gets here, it's probably going to be pretty cool. And it's not like there's exhaust gas flowing through it. It's got to go up the EGR pipe to even get there, and then it'll be on the it'll be on the back of the blockout plate. So silicone will probably work. It's never gonna, yeah, you can use regular silicone on there, probably be okay. And that's what I got. I'm gonna silicone the intake side and put the metal gasket on the EGR tube side. Okay. That's pretty clean, and that's actuating pretty good now. Yep, no problem with that. Cool. Okay, so that's ready to go back in. Might as well cut it out of the side I already cut off. And it can be a little bit bigger than your gasket. You know, it doesn't even have to be the same shape, as long as you get both holes in the right spot, and it'll work just fine, as long as it doesn't hit anything. You could even just cut it square. It's just if it hangs past the flange on the housing for the EGR, maybe it won't fit in the space. So you know, you can make it a little bit bigger, but I wouldn't make it too big because it may not fit in the area where it's going. There we go. Have to take a grinder to the holes and flatten it out so it doesn't dig into the aluminum housing. I'll give it a buff with not the grinding disc, but the sanding disc on the grinder. Doors and windows and doors and stuffed animals. There we go. There's my sanding disc. I wanted to test it out to see if it fit on there, but I guess it won't get in the way. That one lines up. Cool. Okay, holes are good. I'll just double check here, make sure it bolts on properly. I know I checked already, but it was at an angle. There we go. There we go. It's not too tight. You don't want it too tight. You want a little bit of looseness around the bolts. Because when things expand and move around, and you know, could start doing weird things. So a little bit of a gap around the bolt. There we go, nice and loose, perfect. Nice and loose, but not too loose. The gasket will go on the EGR cooler pipe side, and I'll silicone on the EGR valve, and that'll go on there. Okay. So that's what the blockout plate looks like with the high heat paint on it. Okay. So time to put it in. Probably put some silicone on the valve and put it in place and put the two bolts in first before I bolt it in tight. And that'll, and then I don't have to worry about trying to bend that tube to get it in. It'll all bend together and bend to the right angle when I tighten it up. It being a small, a tiny little shim in there, it's not going to have to bend too much, if any. It should bolt right up and no issues. I did put a little bit of oil on the valve there, just to make sure it stays nice and lubricated. It's not locking up in the future. Something like that. Yeah, I will silicone the valve first with the shim on there before I put it in. It's 11 o'clock at night. It sure is quiet. It's just the owl. Just me and the owl and maybe the bunny running around. You piece of crap. Oh, you piece of good stuff. Piece of good stuff, get in there. So I put the top of the locking pliers on there, on the EGR pipe, just hooked it in there against the sensor for the injection pump. So what's going on is there's not quite enough room there because I have a little bit extra with the shimmed out blocking plate. So when I go put the blocking plate on there to get it to line up, I'll just push down on the pliers a little bit to pry out that EGR tube. Then hopefully I can get the bolt to line up in the EGR body there. Okay, so I got the top one in, it's just a matter of getting that bottom one in now. So those bolts can cross thread very easily, so at least they look like they can cross thread pretty easily, so make sure and get them going in straight. You can move it with the end of the socket like that to get it to line up properly. So make sure they're going in nice and straight. Don't cross thread them because then you'd be really screwed. So I'm gonna have to snug up this bottom one. I can tighten the top one later because there's a mounting bolt for the EGR valve here at the bottom. So this one has to be tight before I can put that one in. Or actually, I suppose I can tighten it after if the bolt head is here. Yeah, I can still tighten it after, I think. But I'm gonna put that bottom one in first just to make sure. This one is the pain in the butt one. Kind of. Maybe not so much. You have a swivel extension on your socket. This is the spot for it right here. Put the socket on there first and then tighten it up. And then the short one goes here. The short one's the one you gotta move the fan shroud around to get it in there. And the short one goes in here. Okay, let's give it a quick run here and see what it sounds like.